And away we go. So, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, wherever you happen to be in the world today. Welcome, one and all, ladies and gentlemen, children of all ages, to Coffee Talk. That's right, it is time for Coffee Talk, where we will be having some discussion about what is going on in the world today. Of course, you can find me in the live portion on YouTube Monday through Friday at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And the monikers for that are at Coffee Talk Live and at Prep University. You can also find me on X, formerly known as Twitter, and that is at Coffee Talk Chat, as well as fistfulofradio.com, podcasting out of Atlanta Monday through Thursday at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time and Friday at noon. Being joined today by one feline, Dusty. You can't see her. She's actually sleeping on the desk right in front of me. And as always, oh no, now she's stirring because I said her name. There she goes. She's going to the chair, I think. She's going somewhere. She took off because I said her name. That's what happens. Fickle feline. Of course, I do read through as many of the comments as is reasonable for the benefit of those who are listening and not able to see, so that they can keep up with the conversation. And I'll go ahead and acknowledge some of the people that have chimed in so far today. I see that Helter is here. Puck is here. Dragon is here. Donna Beaver reminding people thumbs up, like, and share. Something like that. Much appreciated. New York Patriot. And Donna says that she received a notification at 1:30 and 2 o'clock. I haven't gotten a notification in almost a week now. And Raccoon is here, says they got their notification right away today. Excellent. It's always important to know. And there's Doc Galt chiming in as we get ready to roll around here. Roll around in the muck and the mire of what is going on in the world today. Taking a look at some snippets from the news. See, Brian has made it. Glad you could join us today. We'll start off with a revelation, as it were. If I can get this to stop, because it's trying to play an ad. A revelation, as it were, about what has been going on the college campuses. Something that we all kind of suspected anyways, but now it has been further revealed. And this is going to be a Fox News article. One more comment. Nature Nerd says they were right. Michael Knowles called it too, that Minnesota has been taken over by Somalia thanks to Obama, which is why Minnesota's new flag is blue and has a star on it. Interesting. So here we go. Fox News article. An actual revolution. Communist Party organizer reveals the true mission at UCLA anti-Israel rallies. But again, saw this coming. We know it's all outside interference stirring up these colleges and universities. A watchdog organization with a focus on higher education released video this week showing an operative from an outside communist group taking part in an anti-Israel protest on the campus of the University of California, Los Angeles. Quote, "I'm a revolutionary organizer," a woman named Annie tells an undercover journalist with accuracy in media in a video released Wednesday. Quote, "I'm an outside agitator," she adds, with a smile. "I'm with the Revcom Corp for the Emancipation of Humanity," Annie said, when asked what group she was with, while describing her fellow communists as, quote, "comrades." Revcom, which made news last fall for burning an American flag at a Jason Aldean concert, writes on its website that, quote, "This system of capitalism imperialism is the source of all outrages and madness that people are subjected to here and all over the world, and is long past time it was swept off the face of the earth." Because Lord knows you can't show me any other type of government that doesn't have outrageous behavior and madness from its government. There's never been a socialist government, never been a communist government, never been a dictatorship Never been an aristocracy that abused its people, right? Just capitalism. That's the only one. Not this, but in general, yes. Annie said when asked if she organized the specific protest at UCLA. But we are part of it. We were here last night, uniting people. We're part of a broad, we're a little bit different because we're about getting organized for an actual revolution. The woman in the video appears to be a Revcom activist, Annie Day, but Fox News Digital could not independently confirm it. Revcom, led by political activist Bob Avakin, is described by Influence Watch as a radical left political party in the United States that seeks to overthrow the government and implement a social system of government with a bias in the 1960s liberal activist movements. The RCP continues to spread its message of communist ideas and replacing the government system in the United States. Go live in a country that's already communist. Why don't you do that? You love it so much. There's plenty of countries where that's normal and they live under a communist regime. Go live in one of those countries. Why have you got to do it here? Why have you got to try to transform this country? Do you think it's going to be better somehow? Quote again, our investigation confirms that in many cases, the anti-Semitic protests taking place on college campuses across the country are being organized and supported by outside agitators. Accuracy in Media President Adam Gillette told Fox News Digital, it should come as no surprise that the Revolutionary Communist Party played a role in stoking the flames of hatred at UCLA, where they go on to explain that 130 protesters were arrested there earlier this month for, rioting and protesting and all the rest of it. Doc says she is a paid socialist. Yeah, and doesn't that kind of defeat the purpose? How can you be a socialist and get a fat check? Nature Nerd says Israel defends itself from a terror attack that kills thousands, blocks 200 missiles from Iran, and these idiot protesters in the international community protest Israel about defending itself. And Puck says, I wish those vaults in Fallout were real. I'd move into one. And here's Dilo joining us today. Glad you could make it. So big surprise. And we've already been reading stuff like this because you wonder where the money comes from, because somebody's getting paid to do this. And many of the leaders, aka agitators on these college campuses and college universities, or university campuses, I misspoke there. That's what actual misspeaking looks like, by the way. Not like what the governor of California or New York does when they claim they misspoke and they take an entire sentence out of context. Misspeaking is when you flub a word. But we've been reading articles about this, that Soros has been funding a lot of the agitators that are whipping things up at these colleges and universities, as well as others of Soros's ilk. And now we find out that the Communist Party is also whipping these people up. I want to know who funds them. Who funds Revcoms? Where does Revcom get its money? Who funds Revcoms? That's what I'd like to know. Where do they get their money from? The Revolutionary Communist Party of the USA, Revcoms. And, looking it up really quickly off the top of my head, because I'm curious here, I just typed it in to see if I could find anything. They talk about fundraising live streams, but it doesn't say who is giving the money. It doesn't say who's giving the money. They sure take a lot of donations. They said on their last live stream they pulled over $100,000. I'm looking it up on Bing, actually. But who's funding them? And again, these are paid activists. Hardly seems true socialist or communist to me. Hardly at all. Doc says, have you ever noticed that a lot of this stuff happens in areas where this behavior is more tolerated? Of course. Of course. And Unknown Nose says, commies never ever think twice about breaking their own rules. No, they don't. No, they don't. They. But speaking of the protests, we can jump to Harvard University in Boston, who has come to an accord, apparently, with the pro-Palestinian protesters. And I think this is interesting because essentially the protesters there have just all of a sudden given up. Bloomberg article, Harvard protesters end with a whimper as Israel divestment demands have failed. That's right, because the colleges and universities, they don't want to hear all that crap. I love how they put signs like this up. Here's in front of Harvard. And you see it says, there's a sign hanging, liberated zone, with a Palestinian flag painted on the sign. Liberated zone. We just go claim a spot in a park or in front of a university or, wherever. It's a liberated zone, man. You need to stay out. No police, man. Liberated zone. Yeah. It's just so stupid. And Spectre is here. Glad you could make it. And Donna points out that socialism can't survive without capitalism. That's why they've never been able to get it to work in France, which is technically a socialist country. How does it look like things are going in France? France is a damn mess. The Nature Nerd wants to know why we have a right to control Ukraine and Israel's military when we are thousands of miles away. Because we're a big, powerful country, and our government likes to throw its weight around in areas that are none of their damn business. That's why. They want to police the world. Thank you, Theodore Roosevelt. So reading into the article, again, this is from Bloomberg. Pro-Palestinian protesters at Harvard University are clearing out their weeks-long encampment without achieving their primary demand. That is, forcing the school to cut its financial ties to Israel. Do they even really have financial ties to Israel? It's become a pattern. Demonstrators at Northwestern and Brown also took down their tents and tables recently, assuaged by the school's promises to consider their pleas. The protesters initially viewed this as progress in their boycott, divestment, sanctions campaigns to drive the university's endowments to divest from the Jewish state and weapons makers. They are now confronting a tough reality. The schools are not going to do it. Quote, we're under no illusions. We do not believe these meetings and divestment wins. Our divestment wins, excuse me. The group Harvard Out of Occupied Palestine wrote in an Instagram post, these side deals are intended to pacify us away from full disclosure and divestment. You still went for it. Harvard has agreed to consider requests, which is what they've said all along. Yeah, we'll think about it. To reinstate students who were suspended for taking part in protests, but will continue disciplinary proceedings that could result in official admonishments or expulsions, according to the university spokesperson. President Alan Garber will pursue a meeting between demonstrators and the chair of the committee that oversees shareholder responsibility, as well as other university leaders, the spokesperson said. Harvard will answer questions about its endowment and will not discuss divestment. While administrators at schools across the U.S., including the University of Minnesota, Rutgers, and Sacramento State, agreed to listen to activists, the idea of actually selling holdings in Israeli assets or defense stocks was a non-starter, given the opaque nature of many endowments and their investments, the pushback from donors, and potential conflict with anti-BDS laws in many states. Quote, we said a flat no to the idea of divesting. Northwestern President Michael Schill wrote in a Chicago Tribune op-ed on May 9th, less than 2 weeks after the school sent out a statement pledging to consider students' views on the matter. Officials at Brown have assured at least one major donor that the university won't ultimately divest from Israel, despite a public pledge to review its holdings, the New York Times reported. So, yeah, after all these weeks of whining and crying and pretending to go on hunger strikes and fighting with cops and wrecking the landscape in front of these universities and breaking into buildings and all the other nonsense that they've done, they folded their chairs and went home with a promise that maybe they'll consider lifting some suspensions, maybe, and nothing else. So, tail between their legs after all this time. Puck says these people need a serious attitude adjustment. And Chillin' Dave has joined us. Glad you could make it. And Chillin says, join the armed services. They'll get you educated with or without school. Yeah. I don't know. The armed services has gotten pretty soft. Maybe they need to join the French Foreign Legion because they're not going to have very much credibility in the U.S. even after joining the military. Nature Nerd says, how many of these college students and protesters would try to dodge the draft? Most of them. They'd be on their way to Canada, but Canada won't take them. Canada doesn't want our wimpy. Oh, actually, I don't know. Canada might take them because Canada's gotten pretty weak too. Canada has gotten to be one of the worst of the westernized countries out there that has abused their citizens and altered their laws and gotten really weak and pathetic and come up with all sorts of strange rules and regulations. So I don't know. Canada might take them. They can have them. Go on, move up there and live off Canadian welfare indefinitely. These are people that have never contributed anything to society, these students. They've been taken care of their entire lives. They've been taken care of. They have spent decades in school. Think about it. It's not just K through 12th grade, okay? Which is 14 years in school. Then you tack on Head Start, which most of these kids probably went to Head Start, which is still state run. It's still indoctrination. 15 years. Then you give them 4 years of college. That's 19 years of their life wasted. And then they're about to waste the other 40 years of their life because the degree's not worth anything. It's really kind of pathetic. And all that time, someone's always taking care of them. Mommy, daddy, big daddy government, big brother has been taking care of them. And they've never contributed anything, even for themselves. Never taken care of anyone, not even themselves. They don't pay bills. They don't have to really worry about much of anything, most of them. There are, and back in the day, you saw this more, but nowadays not so much. Students who worked full time to support their college. And I can respect that. I can respect that. At least you're learning how to take care of yourself. You're paying rent somewhere, you're paying your bills, whatever, you're buying your groceries. But most of these kids, these privileged kids like this, they've never had to earn anything. And they're in for a really hard life. They're in for a really hard life. Doc says if you hit the college in the pocketbook, you'll see their stance change dramatically. And Chillin calls them the Jiffy Lube generation. And Raccoon says, I can't believe there's this many Palestinians in the country. They love their country so much. Send them back to fight. Yeah, why don't you go back to Palestine? Well, most of them are not Palestinians. Well, they just think that they're supporting Palestine. Really pathetic, actually. It's really pathetic. But same argument applies. Go protest over there. Nobody ever wants to go to the source. They want to sit someplace comfortable where it's nice and safe. The United States, the United Kingdom, Australia. Sit somewhere where it's nice and safe and they don't have to worry about going to jail or being beaten to a bloody pulp or hung from a tree for voicing their opinions, burned at the stake, thrown off the roof of a building, whatever they do over there. Puck says no such thing as Palestine, though. Yeah, exactly. I know what you mean. I've made the same argument that there is no. Although the UN is trying to make it so. They're trying to make it officially like a real thing, a real Palestine. They're voting for the possibility of statehood. It would be a massive mistake on the part of the UN, but they don't care because they're about disrupting basically everybody. They want to disrupt the whole rest of the world because they want to bring us under the umbrella of a global government. And I would be all for the idea of a unified global government if you could trust the people in charge, which you can't. So it will never work. It will never work. Nature Nerd says high school is a waste of time since most students don't even work for the first 18 years of their life. Then they complain about a minimum wage job at 19. Yeah, because they don't know what to expect. They've never had to work. I've talked about it before. I've worked since I was like 9 or 10 years old, doing all sorts of things, doing yard work. And I mean like landscaping type yard work, like rolling out grass and digging ditches and moving wheelbarrows full of rocks and crap, painting and doing building maintenance, vacuuming carpets and sweeping floors and washing windows and stuff like that, cleaning toilets for an office building. I did that in junior high school. You learn the value. You value that $3.35 an hour that I think was the minimum wage in the early to mid 80s, It means something. And even then, that was pittance. That was nothing, but it was mine and I earned it. You know what I mean? These kids don't understand that at all. And speaking of not being able to understand anything, I see Dusty took her position in her chair. Dusty sleeping in the chair, everybody, getting nice and comfortable. The only cat in the room. Everybody else is laying somewhere, I'm sure. Speaking of not having a clue as to what's going on in the world, Chillin says, how can folks live day to day with zero cash? I don't get it. Oh, they get money from somewhere. You see these people that are complaining about, oh, I don't have no money. I don't have this. I don't have that. And they reek of marijuana. They're wearing $800 brand new Nike sneakers. You're getting money from somewhere. You're not spending it wisely at all. Brian says he hates school. So did I. The best thing I discovered in junior high school was how to play hooky. I used to hate it because I realized even in junior high, wow, I'm really not getting anything out of this. I'm not getting anything out of this. It's absolutely worthless to me. It's pointless. Hi, Granny Smith. Come here. Come here, darling. Come here, Granny Smith. Good girl. Oh, hello, Granny Smith. Granny Smith, everybody. It's all right. Responded to her name and came up to me. I saw her in the doorway. If she'll turn to the camera, I don't know. Want to say hi to everybody? If you can hear her purring. Hi. Granny Smith, everybody. Hooray. There she is. Sweet little thing, actually. Very unique story. This particular cat, I know I just went down a bunny trail because I picked up a cat. I can't help myself. This is a cat that was born in the wild, living under somebody's shed. And she, the person had basically contacted us, told us about her, because she was like, yeah, the cat lives under the shed next to the house. She's always been out there. And we put food out for her. She comes and takes it, but she's been limping. She won't put her leg down, even her paw. And so we found out that what she meant was that the cat has been limping for months, unable to walk properly. And we caught her and we brought her to the vet and they checked her and she had a broken elbow. And it's healed, but she still has a permanent limp because of how long it was broken. But what's interesting about her is, again, this is a cat that's always been outdoors. Once we brought her into the house, she will not go out. If you open an exterior door, she backs up from it. It's like she's discovered, okay, this is the life for me. This is what it's like inside. I'm not going out. Forget it. She will not go outside now. You want to go down? Okay. So really unique situation with Granny Smith. As I get back on track here, really quickly. Puck wants to know if I heard about a large bank in Australia ending cash withdrawals. Some businesses are already refusing cash. Not Australia, but I've been hearing about that happening. I don't know if it was Australia that I read that about, but yeah, I've been hearing about that happening, that they're trying to get away from cash. Australia has a small enough population to force that on their people. Doc says they got their first job at 15 with a work permit. I tell my kids this, and they look at me with this deer in the headlight look. Yeah, I didn't have a work permit. I worked, most of the places I worked, it was under the table. And, back then you could do that. And I've talked about that before. There was a flower shop on Harvard Avenue in Allston, Massachusetts. And I just walked in there one morning and said, hey, you looking for help? I'm available before I go to school in the morning because I know you guys open early. And he was like, yeah, sure. And that's it. Yeah. Hey, you got a job. I'll pay you a couple of bucks an hour. Just cash, come in for 3 hours. I'll give you $10. Yeah. Something like that. Same thing with when I was working for the Ronex building, which was the office building I used to clean the toilets for. I cleaned the bathrooms when I was in junior high school. They paid me cash. They weren't supposed to be doing that, but you could do that back then. You could go find a job. The paper routes paid me cash. That was legal, though, because there's some discrepancy about that. I mean, there's some provision for that for young people delivering the newspapers and on and on. You could just do that in those days. Raccoon said she's a cutie. And Chillin' Dave says they went to Wasamatta U. Oh, so you went with Bullwinkle, I guess. And New York Patriot says after high school, they went to a technical school only to have one of their instructors say I'm overtrained for the school, learned more in high school auto shop. Interesting. And Brian said she liked my beard. Yeah, Granny Smith. She puts her claws in my beard and pulls it sometimes. But anyways, yeah, and that's something the younger generation now, most of them, they don't get it. They don't get it because part of the reason is because that option's been taken away from them. You can't, an adult has a hard time finding an under the table job now. But, the times have changed a lot. And there's a lot of parents who are under the misconception of, I don't want my kids to have to go through what I did. I get it, but some of what you went through made you who you are. You don't have to buy them everything. That's a huge mistake, actually, because you'll spoil them and they won't appreciate it. And then there should be some semblance of a work ethic. Just ask Andy Griffith. On the Andy Griffith show, there was an episode about that where his son was trying to get a raise on his allowance. And he was like, yeah, well, this other kid's, I get a quarter a week and this other kid gets 75 cents a week. And, he just gets it and I've got to do chores. And Andy was explaining to him that that's how you learn to appreciate the value of your money. And you're not getting 75 cents a week, and you will still work for it if you want it. Absolutely. And you learn to have a good work ethic and hopefully not squander your money or get into financial problems. We live in a society where everybody wants you to borrow everything. Everybody wants you to be jealous of the neighbor's car. Everybody wants you to wear $300 jeans and $500 sneakers. You don't need any of that. It might be nice. And if you can afford it, you can afford it, but most people can't. But they will purchase those things anyways. They'll pursue those things because they think they have to prove something to people who don't care. Nobody cares. Nobody needs you to prove any of that. Prove that you're smart. Don't pretend that you have money and you're in debt all over the place or stealing or something else. Prove that you have a brain. Puck says, meanwhile, in the UK, 44% of job-seeking immigrants remain unemployed. I wonder what our numbers are. Yeah, they remain unemployed because there's no work for them. It's not out there. And then Nature Nerd, one more here, says, modern monetary theory is insane, indefinite debt. And they want you to be indebted because you're a slave. The more people you owe, the more people you're enslaved to. bad enough that you're a debt slave to, like, the utility companies, for example, or to property taxes or whatever you got to pay. But each thing that you tack on is someone else you're a slave to. And the more there are, the worse it is. As simple as that. And these kids don't understand this nowadays. And it's a damn shame. It's a damn shame how that's all gone down. So they're all angry and entitled and aggressive. Think they are owed everything, don't know how to earn anything, don't care to actually earn anything. They think they're going to continue. And like I said yesterday, I believe, everybody wants to ride in the wagon, but then there's nobody left to pull it. You can only take from other people so much and spread it around so much, and then it's so thin, it just evaporates, and then everything collapses. But as Doc Galt points out here, he says, according to Uncle Joe, the economy is just fine. And speaking of which, NBC article pulled up here, and this is kind of important because it's about the upcoming debates. It says Biden and Trump agree to debate in late June and September. It says the first debate will be hosted by CNN in Atlanta at 9 p.m. Eastern Time on June 27th, or Eastern Standard Time, on June 27th, and will not take place in front of a live audience. That was Uncle Joe's stipulation. So he's finally agreed to debate Trump. He kind of has no choice. He has to at some point. But the provision was there will be no audience, and they delayed it all the way until the very end of June. Again, June 27th. And then in late September. So we're only going to get 2, and they're delaying it as long as possible, which I think is a mistake. Monkey says debating on CNN is going to be a huge mistake, but that will that's really the best that Trump could do. And so he agreed to it just to get the debates done. And yeah, I agree. It shouldn't be on CNN, and it should definitely be in front of an audience, because now they can edit the hell out of it or pretend like things were said that weren't said, or that something didn't happen. And I think they delayed it as long as possible so that they can try to coach Joe as much as they can. But that's also a mistake because, and I've speculated many times that I think a lot of Joe's behavior, it could be for the purpose of plausible deniability. But if that's the case, man, he's a good actor, because it really looks like that he is that he's in serious cognitive decline. And anyone who's ever worked in mental health, I've worked in mental health as well as my wife, and anyone who's worked in mental health or dealt with people with dementia or worked in an old age home or anything, you know what I'm talking about. Even a week, a month, things can get so much worse so quickly. They should try to knock this out as quick as they can, because all the coaching in the world's not going to help that man if he really isn't cognitive decline. He'll be much worse by the end of June. By June 27th, he'll be worse. By September, by the end of September, even worse than that if he truly is in a full cognitive decline. He'll be a gibbering idiot. Nostalgic Pod Blast says this will be epic. One of them will be on something. Yeah, we never know. And then Chillin' Dave says that's to help JB give the memory meds time to work. Maybe. And Puck would like to see Tucker Carlson host one of the debates. I haven't even read the article yet. Doc Galt says, oh boy, they're going to have to juice up Uncle Joe again for another conversation. But again, with no audience, it'll be hard to prove that, they can edit the hell out of that. That'll work out in Joe's favor considerably if there's no audience there. I think there should be audience participation. So really quickly here, back into the article, and again, this is NBC News. President Joe Biden and former President Donald Trump agreed Wednesday to participate in general election debates on June 27th and September 10th. Oh, I thought it was later in September. That's like the second week of September. Ending speculation about whether 2024 general election debates would happen at all. I mean, he kept getting called on it. Joe couldn't keep putting it off. CNN will host the first debate in late June at 9 p.m. at its studios in Atlanta, according to a press release from the news organization. ABC News said it will host the September debate. The matchups between the current and former presidents quickly came about Wednesday after Biden campaign proposed a new debate schedule ahead of the November 5th general election. Quote, to ensure candidates may maximize their time allotted in the debate, no audience will be present. Yeah, that's not why you're doing that. Moderators for the debate and additional details will be announced at a later date, according to CNN. The agreement came hours after Biden challenged Trump to two debates hosted in a television studio ahead of the November election, a departure from the traditional system that has been used. Trump quickly responded to the challenge, saying he disagreed with Biden's call to not debate in front of a crowd, but accepted the proposed dates as indicated he too was eager to get it over with. Well, it says eager to debate, but I assume he's eager to get it over with because he's been calling for it for quite a while. But Joe and his campaign have been putting it off. They don't want to put him in front of anybody. They don't want him on camera. He looked bad enough last time and still won. 81 million votes, folks. 81 million votes. Doc Galt says Joe Biden has doubles. You know that, right? Yeah, I don't know how well a double can pull that off either. Helter says the debates sound more like a promo for a wrestling match. Monkey says he saw articles trying to pin Trump on being mentally in decline, but seems like huge MS media aren't picking up on that. And Nature Nerd says Trump 100,000 audience in New Jersey, which you would think, is a blue state. I'll catch a few of these up, and I see Zane has joined us here today. New York Patriot said kids don't even know, and this is previous discussion here, don't even know what off the books means. They have zero interest in earning their keep. I begged for a summer job when I was in school. Yeah, I feel you. I mean, I went around and collected, because I lived in a bottle redemption state. I would go around and collect bottles and cans and turn them in because I could get 5 cents a piece for them. I'd walk around with a shovel in the wintertime. I actually would, in Brighton, I forget what street it is. It's off of Commonwealth Ave in Brighton. I was doing janitorial work, maintenance work. I would, vacuum the floors, sweep, take the trash out, stuff like that for an apartment complex there. And with that, I got in shoveling for the hotel or motel. There was a motel behind that apartment complex, and I would shovel out the motel. I'd be there for hours whenever it snowed, shoveling for like $5 an hour, and that'll wear you out. But I was happy to earn it because it was my money. That's what mattered. Puck says the audience should be divided in half between Trump supporters and journalists. Okay. So I catch up a few more comments here. Dragon says, by the time September comes around, the new drug cocktail that's fueling Bad Touch Joe's recent rants will have lost all efficiency and they'll cancel the second debate. Maybe. And Chillin doesn't think he could listen to that much garbage and lies. And New York Patriot said even if they would have the debate tomorrow, Joe's in such decline that all of the coaching wouldn't help. The entire country can see how unfit he is. I would watch for an earplug. Because they have those like hidden ones. They have the really small ones that you can put into your ear. You probably won't be able to see that on the camera angle, but I'm willing to bet someone is going to be coaching him what to say. But that also, if he is in cognitive decline, still will not work because he won't be able to keep up with what he's being told. He won't be able to keep up with what he's being told. As we shift around here. And this is interesting. This is interesting. It's another whistleblower deal. Another whistleblower deal, this time in East Palestine. The East Palestine where the train derailment took place has a whistleblower. We'll see how long this guy lives. Because whistleblowers seem to be dropping off a lot these days. Doesn't pay to tell the truth. Doesn't pay. Daily Mail article explores chilling claims about the East Palestine train derailment. An EPA whistleblower has come forward with shocking claims. Hold still. The article shifted. Over the government's response to the toxic East Palestine train derailment. Robert Krotel, a scientist who spent 4 decades in government agencies, claims to News Nation that the EPA strayed from its normal safety procedures when testing for hazardous contamination around the crash site. And has Joe been there yet? Has he been there yet? I know that recently, and we read the article a couple of weeks back, like maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago now, that dear old sweet old Uncle Joe said that he would be going to East Palestine finally. I don't know that he has yet. I still think he hasn't been there. Back to the article. He alleged that leaders delayed in deploying chemical testing planes for 5 days, but still decided that evacuated residents were free to return to their homes after only 3 days. Residents who returned home quickly reported adverse reactions, including rashes, breathing problems, and nausea. That deployment was the most unusual deployment I've ever seen, Krotel said of the testing aircraft. You just wouldn't do it that way. Krotel originally worked for the Department of Defense, where he worked to develop the airborne spectral photometric environmental collection technology, or ASPECT aircraft, a high-tech plane used to detect levels of chemical contamination in the air. He continued this work when he moved to the EPA to work as a contractor, but said throughout his career he had never seen the aircraft used in the manner that it was in the East Palestine disaster. At the time that officials told residents it was safe for them to return to their homes, EPA Chief Michael Regan specifically singled out the use of the Aspect plane as a reason he made the decision. We've had boots on the ground, leading robust air quality testing, including the advanced technology Aspect plane, he said. However, procedures normally called for the Aspect plane to be deployed within hours, and Krotel said he is still confused why it wasn't deployed in a timely manner, feeling it may have missed key data on the level of toxicity in the area. So basically, they said they had deployed the plane, didn't do it, and then sent everybody home, and then sent the plane out 2 days after letting the people go back home, which took place 3 days after the accident, and then everybody got sick. So they lied about it, and he's calling them out on it. So we'll see how long Krotel lives, or if he ends up dead somewhere, or he loses his job, or whatever's going to happen to him. And Chillin's got to go. Glad you could join us today, Chillin. And Monkey says, imagine if his hearing goes out and then the in-ear microphone isn't helping anymore. Well, he'll just pick up the handheld mic and wander around on stage and just say random stuff like he always does and embarrass the hell out of himself. Monkey says apparently he was there on February 16th of this year. Was he? Was he there on February 16th? I'm not sure. I just remember reading an article where they said that he was finally going, but it was too little too late, essentially. And I was wondering if he ever actually made it. But I guess, it's so late, nobody cares now. Yeah, okay, Joe, you showed up a long time after the accident. If you were going to go at all. If you weren't going to go, just say you're not going to go, or you can't. Don't say you're going to go and then keep putting it off, and then months later, it's the next year, and you decide you're going to go. Helter says, with the kind of chemicals and sheer volume of them, it's no surprise the EPA officials downplayed this revolting deployment immediately. Absolutely. Oh, I'm way behind here. I'm way behind here. But yeah, I love the whistleblowers. I wish there were more of them, and I wish that things would go better for them. I wish things went better for them because bad stuff happens to whistleblowers. They wind up dead. They lose their jobs. They can't continue their careers. They get ostracized. They get fined. They get jailed. Whistleblowers have a tough life, but all you hear from government, all you hear from companies and corporations is transparency, transparency, transparency. Oh, no retaliation for whistleblowers. Oh, we'll take care of you. We want you to tell the truth. We want you to come forward. And then when you do, they kill you. You decide to commit suicide suddenly, or you have a mysterious accident like the last two guys from Boeing met with unfortunate demise. You end up committing suicide by shooting yourself 3 times in the back of the head. Weird stuff happens. Weird stuff happens to you. And here's another example. Here's another whistleblower, another Daily Mail article. Different kind of whistleblower. David McBride has been jailed for almost 6 years. Oh, way to go, David. A man who leaked classified military documents that revealed allegations that Australian soldiers committed war crimes in Afghanistan will spend at least 2 years and 3 months behind bars. David McBride, who is 60 now, had pleaded guilty to leaking classified documents that revealed the alleged war crimes. Justice David Mossop sentenced McBride to an aggregated 5 years and 8 months in prison for 3 charges in the Act Supreme Court on Tuesday. The former military lawyer will have a non-parole period of 27 months, meaning he'll remain behind bars until at least August of 2026. McBride took 235 documents, 207 of which were classified as secret, by printing copies at different defense facilities and taking them out in his backpack. The classification indicates disclosure of the contents could seriously damage the national interest or people, including of life. The leaked documents led to reports about Australian Special Forces soldiers committing alleged war crimes. An inquiry into the documents later found credible information about 23 incidents of potential war crimes, which involved the killing of 39 Afghans in between 2005 and 2016. Human rights lawyers and advocates argued punishing whistleblowers would have a chilling effect on free speech and scare people away from exposing wrongdoing. Well, that's why they're putting him in jail, because they don't want him to talk about it. They don't want him to reveal anything. There's McBride. And you know what's funny about this? Okay, he took classified documents, and he took the classified documents because he felt duty bound to whistleblow because of war crimes that he felt were committed. And apparently he was right. He was right, because they have identified that there is credible information in 23 incidences that have been exposed in those documents. So 23 crimes have been committed that they now know about and have to investigate because he was a whistleblower. But we're going to throw you in prison. We're going to throw you in prison. Yeah. So, please, transparency. Whistleblow. Don't be afraid. If you know something, say something. Tell us the truth. It'll be all right. It'll be all right. At least he's alive. I'll give him that. At least he's still alive. He didn't die of like a multitude of diseases that hit him all at once, along with a stroke, like the last guy from Boeing had 3 or 4 different viruses and a stroke and pneumonia all at once, and winds up in the hospital in intensive care and drops dead mysteriously. And Puck says hiding crimes is for the national interest. Yes. Yes, it's in the national interest. It's a secret. It's a secret. Yeah, it's a secret, all right. And Sven says Australians don't have free speech. For that matter, ours is going into the toilet too. Yes, it is. We don't really have free speech either. It's an illusion. It's an illusion because they hinder it at every opportunity. They sure do. And Dragon says the legal system is not about justice. It's about power. Thank you, Dragon. I can agree with that. Helter says this is a compelling example that shows that Australia is not being a free and fair country. No, not for a long time. Not since like the 80s when Paul Hogan was still a big deal. You remember who remembers who Paul Hogan is? Somebody will know, and they'll put it in the comment section. And Doc Galt says McBride should signal to Julian Assange. Did I pronounce that right? But yeah, I mean, you can't tell the truth. You can't trust that. You can't be a whistleblower because this is what happens even on the lowest levels. Even on the lowest levels, even if you're whistleblowing on your job, you're risking losing your job or being ostracized on the job, feeling like you need to quit. Feeling like you need to quit. And losing your job, either quitting or being fired, and very likely not being able to work in your profession again. Because nobody wants you. You talked. You ran your mouth. And Nature Nerd says whistleblowers die in the name of retaining money and power for a little bit longer. Exactly. And it catches up on them anyways. It catches up on them anyways. And this is a great example of that because, we're going to transfer into one more semi-related article because we're going to talk about Boeing directly. But we're not going to talk about whistleblowers at Boeing. We're not going to talk about whistleblowers at Boeing. We're going to talk about something else. Okay? And this will tell you everything that you need to know about government and big business, no matter where they are. Okay? And this is a CBS News article. Yes, some people figured it out. Of course, Paul Hogan was Crocodile Dundee. CBS News article. Boeing could be prosecuted after it allegedly breached agreement terms, and that the agreement terms are with the federal government. Justice Department said it is determining whether it will prosecute airplane manufacturer Boeing after federal investigators accused the corporation of violating the terms of a 2021 deferred prosecution agreement, according to a letter filed in a Texas court on Tuesday. In January 2021, following two crashes of 737 MAX jets years earlier that killed 346 people, Boeing and the federal government entered into an agreement whereby the company agreed to pay a $2.5 billion settlement and abide by custodial stipulations in exchange for the Justice Department dropping a fraud conspiracy charge after 3 years. That 3-year period, overseen by a federal judge in Texas, was set to expire in July and would have resulted in the Justice Department closing the case if it determined Boeing had fully complied with the conditions. But on Tuesday, federal prosecutors wrote that Boeing breached its obligations under the deferred prosecution agreement, in part by allegedly failing to design, implement, and enforce a compliance and ethics program to prevent and detect violations of the U.S. fraud laws throughout its operations, which, goes back to the whistleblowing. And people did whistleblow, and they're dead. They're dead. So there you are. And what's going on here is that the Department of Justice made an arrangement with Boeing, basically a deferred prosecution agreement, You pay $2.5 billion, and yeah, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, it'll go away. And now they're revisiting it because Boeing ain't paid yet. Boeing hasn't paid it yet for whatever reason. They can't afford to, or whatever's going on. They have not paid the $2.5 billion that they agreed to pay to the Justice Department. And now they're going to prosecute them, or they're going to try. So I'm like, so you can buy off a prosecution? I guess if the check's big enough, you can buy off anything. 346 people were killed because of technical problems on 2 of your jets. But forget all that. Just, give us some money. It'll be all right. That's essentially what that says. Helter says, and yet the Department of Justice hasn't mentioned anything about the recent deaths of former Boeing whistleblowers. The Department of Justice won't even launch an investigation into that matter. Very strange. Oh, but they didn't get their $2.5 billion. Show me the money, Boeing. Show me the money. Brian says, reminds me of the story of Frankie Potts, an FBI agent who worked for a mafia family to uncover information. Then he met with a violent end. And Dragon says the DOJ thinks that forcing Boeing to pay large sums of money is a great way to punish them. Yeah. Oh, I'm sure they don't want to pay it. I wonder how the families of the 346 people who died in those accidents feel about a $2.5 billion deferment settlement to avoid going to court. And I wonder what Boeing will do to get out from under that, because they'll get away with it. I'll be shocked if the issue is pushed and they don't find some other agreement or some other way to pay this off so they don't have to bother. And Doc says this comes to show the 2-tier justice system that many say does not exist. Oh, there's something going on. It exists, all right. Money talks and bullshit walks, as they say. I mean, that's a lot of money. It's a lot of money. I wonder how much of it, if any, is going to the families of the 346 people that died, or if they've already been paid off. I'm willing to bet they've already gotten insurance claims. So, and I'm going to assume that $2.6 billion is going directly to the Department of Justice. But again, rather than prosecute them and force them to make corrections so that it doesn't happen again, they'd rather just get a fat check. And Puck says, how many people have Pfizer and Moderna killed? Millions. I'm just guessing. Hundreds of thousands, millions of people. You'll never prove it. And they won't be held accountable either. Won't be held accountable. And Brian made a donation to the channel. Thank you, Brian. Very much appreciated. Very much appreciated. Nature Nerd says workers' life insurance is about $40,000 or $40K, not a 401k. 401ks are a scam. Don't get me started on 401ks. They're a freaking scam. But yeah, I think that's an important story. And that's one that's flying right under the radar. I haven't seen that in the mainstream. You took a payoff. You made a settlement. Oh, we'll forget all about it. Hey, just give us throw a little cash our way, Boeing. You can afford it. You can afford it. God help us. And we're stuck down here. We're stuck down here. Right, Daniel? Daniel and Dusty in the room now. You see Dusty is still sleeping in the chair. And with that, we are getting close to the top of the hour. So I do have to go ahead and start signing off. Again, you are listening to and or watching Coffee Talk, and you can find the live portion if you wanted to join it on YouTube Monday through Friday at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And that's at Coffee Talk Chat and at Prepper University. You can also find me on X, formerly known as Twitter, if you care to join me there. And that is at Coffee Talk Chat. Or I said at Coffee Talk Chat for YouTube, didn't I? That's at Coffee Talk Live, excuse me. And you can also find me on fistfulofradio.com, podcasting out of Atlanta Monday through Thursday at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time and Friday at noon. Again, special thanks to Brian, who made a donation to the channel. Always appreciated, always helpful. And thanks to everyone else who was able to join us here today. Hope you got something out of the conversation, and we will do this again